Welcome everyone to the after party for episode 8, which was Exes, Besties, and Blurred Lines, where we talked about the concept of being friends with your ex. We actually got a lot of cool questions and comments about this episode, and we're excited to dive in just a little bit deeper to that. What you got, Rachel?
What do I have? Well, it is an interesting the biggest question we got was that they wanted us to dive a little deeper into it, especially related to the how you know when somebody is worth it and when you know that it is valuable enough to try to make the effort. And there are a couple of things that come into play there. One is we talked about time as one of the main cornerstones of just giving it enough time so that you know whether or not that's the case. And then the other one that I think is interesting to explore is this idea of how you put something together that you probably broke apart in a pretty negative way.
Yes.
And so, you know what I'm saying about that? I mean,
Yeah, rarely do people just part ways and shake hands and walk off into the sunset. I think there's usually some sort of blow up or some sort of bad behavior that precipitates a breakup. Maybe not always, but most of the time.
most likely, if it was a significant relationship. And I was visiting with a friend about this, and we had this discussion about uh, breaking some value systems that are in place, and that breaks a lot of trust. And I think that in most cases, it is likely that both people have broken some values and probably some levels of trust when you're in a breakup. And then you have to determine whether or not you can get past those. And the discussion I had with her was you have to decide and determine whether or not there's enough value with that person as your friend, and that it's worth it to go through the effort. The other
Yeah.
piece of this is, we've talked a little bit about forgiveness, Sarah. I think that's just really important.
Yes, for sure. And thinking about the value systems, we've discussed this in other episodes that sometimes good people behave badly and it's somebody who's a good person and they genuinely just made a mistake and did something that they later regretted. And then sometimes not so great people can put on a show and behave okay. And I think if it's a good person who just had an incident or instances of behaving badly, that is someone worth considering forgiving. But if it's someone who's genuinely just not a good person and maybe they duped you for a little while into thinking they were okay, that's a different story.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And I do think that you have to there's this other thing that's hard on this topic, I think, and that is whether or not the mistakes that you make are those ones that you've made over and over and over again. So when that person looks back, if they've seen that you have made that mistake multiple times, whatever that is that you made with them,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and then is that pattern of behavior something that they're
That they
going to deal with?
recognize. Yes,
Right,
that they
that they're going to
recognize and
deal
that they're
with.
willing to change for sure. Absolutely. And I think that if you look at the concept of making amends and forgiveness, both sides of that, that's a big part of being able to come back to being friends with someone is someone coming back and saying, man, I behaved badly. I own it. And the other person saying, I forgive you. And I think that has to be in place in some way in order to, you don't want to just sweep that under the rug and not talk about it.
Yes, and that with that, I think my question to you is, is it necessary to revisit it all when you're doing that? Or I feel like at the point at which you're ready to do that with somebody, you've given it enough time, acknowledging it and then just saying, hey, I wish I hadn't done that and I don't ever want to do that again. Is that enough? Or do you have to revisit the whole scenario, all the situations? I just don't think that's healthy either.
Yeah, I think if you're dwelling on it or trying, I mean, I would say this as a therapist too, that and other therapists work differently, but I don't believe in trying to drag skeletons out of your closet. I don't find value in that in and of itself. What I think is if there's something that happened in the past that's bothering you present day, that's something worth talking about. And if the situation with your ex is still bothering you today, then sure, bring it up and talk about it. But I definitely don't think you want to punish that person by bringing up the behavior, or punish yourself if you're the person who behaved badly. To me, there's no value in that at all. But being able to come clean and own it and move forward, I think, is a super important part of the process.
The other thing that is, seems sort of obvious, but people may not think about, is both people have to be interested. I mean,
Yes.
both people have to be interested in meeting in the middle and exploring their own stuff, and then deciding that they want to go forward. I just don't think it will ever work if you have somebody on one side of the equation that has done the work, and then they're wanting to try to preserve what they can in the relationship. The other person just comes in with absolutely no insight, and really assuming that maybe they just didn't do anything to.
Yeah. Do you have a sense is that more often the person who behaved badly that wants the friendship, or the person who behaved badly that does not want the friendship?
That's a good question. That is a good question. I don't know. I don't know, because I think from my standpoint, just again, my personal business on this is just that I think I have looked at it from, what in the hell was I doing when I was behaving badly in patterns? And then to me, it didn't have anything to do with anybody else. And I just had to go on in there and get up in that business for myself.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know.
And so, I mean, I'm thinking in particular that there is one person that I had a pretty long-term relationship with that has zero interest in having any communication with me. And she's really the only person that I've dated that I have that situation with. And it wasn't that one of us behaved particularly badly. It was just that I decided to end the relationship. And so that is an interesting thing for me, because I would be open to it. And I've reached out to her in various ways. Like a friend of hers passed away, and I reached out to say I was sorry about that, or, things like that. There have been a few things over the years that I have, pinged her about a little bit, and she has given me zero response. And I've known through other people that she just doesn't have any interest in that. And that's okay. I don't fault her for that, but I wonder, because she's the one that got broken up with, if it's more likely that she doesn't want to have an ongoing relationship.
But two things come to mind about that. One is she hasn't ever done it before. And so she just hasn't ever had to work through something to get to something else via having had a relationship. So I wonder if historically she's walked away, either she's walked away or the other person's walked away, and then they just walk away, and that's it. And if that person knows in their heart that they actually just can't put you in that friendship place, I mean, maybe she just knows that.
It seems more like she hates me, so she doesn't want to be. I don't know.
Well, I know Monique, and she hates me too. So you're not alone. So I think we're all in the same boat here. I see a pattern
Here. Somebody might be a bridge burner.
I think that might be accurate. The grudge holder. I don't know.
Maybe Monique is secretly listening to our podcast.
Right. Exactly.
Oh,
I mean, I do think that there are sometimes some people look at situations and just go, no, there's not enough there for me to go back to. There's not enough of something else that I want from that. And so I don't want to do any of that. And that's okay too.
For sure. Yes, it is. Yep. So anything that you would advise people who are maybe looking back at some of their past relationships and saying, well, I thought I couldn't be friends with this person, but maybe it's something worth revisiting. What would you advise them to do or think about?
I think I would advise them to just really think about how they feel about the value, and then the way, if they want to approach, do it without, so you can't control what the other person's going to do or how they're going to react. And so I think you just have to decide how you're going to deal with it, and then be okay with that.
Yeah. Yep.
So I do want to say this on a little bit of a different slant here, is that I want to go back. I can't reiterate this enough about letting some time come in to play there before you try to do this. And there are a couple of things that I think should be a warning sign to you that not enough time has passed yet for you
Okay.
to try to change the course of the relationship.
Okay. What might those signs be?
One, if it was really just like a month ago or something, that's probably a little too soon. But if you are perseverating, if you are just on that hamster wheel, thinking about what happened, when it happened, what you did, then what they did, and then the next thing you did, and then the timeline, and if you're going back on your phone and you're scrolling to see when you had this conversation and that
That's bad. That's bad.
like,
bad news.
No, it's not time. I think that's
Yes.
just a good thing to tell you, no, you're not ready, because you're still trying to understand what happened.
Yes.
So what time that is it's time to go see Dr. Kyle at a therapy office.
Yes, absolutely. Go talk to your therapist about that. Get it all worked out internally. And then guess what? You might want to be friends with that person, but don't try to work it out with them. And I do think there's such a temptation of like, we didn't get closure. People say that all the time. It's like, girl, you are not going to get closure by going back and seeing this person one more time. You got to let it go and move on.
That's what you do in couples therapy.
Yep. Before you break up.
Before you break up, is you either figure out if you can stay together or you seek the closure with some help.
And you call it good and you move on.
Yes. And then one other thing I will say about this, I do think that if you are trying to also well wish the other person to show them how happy you are for them in their new journey really early on, you might want to just leave that at the door too, because I don't know that that never feels very clean to me. Like, are you really happy for them?
Yeah. Yeah.
In the first couple of months, in the first 6 months, and are you really happy for them?
Right. You probably just need to lick your wounds, go to your therapist, and then revisit that in a handful of months.
Let their friends congratulate them and whatever their new life is.
That U-Haul that just pulled up in front of their house.
That's right. Maybe you could send their new person a thank you note for taking.
For taking them off your hands. Or a condolences card.
Either one. I love it.
My friend Deb coined this term called congratudolences. It's when something's like sort of happy and sort of sad. So that seems like maybe an appropriate card to send.
I think that's a perfect card. She should make some. I think they would sell.
I do feel like there are numerous situations in which that term is appropriate, and somebody else dating your ex might be one of those. Like, congratulations on your new relationship. You're going to be calling me in a few years. Yes. Well, as always, we thank you for sending in your thoughts and your comments and your questions to us. Please keep them coming. We're going to keep doing these little after party episodes as long as we get your comments. Please join us later in the week when we are going to be hosting our very first podcast guest. You are in for a treat. Her name is Michelle Casanova, and she is a delight. So please join us Thursday morning for that. But meanwhile, thank you for listening to the Dateable AF podcast, where we help you find your happy ending.
Yes. And remember, be bold, be kind, and for the love of queer dating, don't text your ex, and stay dateable
AF.